Hello and welcome to the show. I am Joe Top Hat. The Twilight Zone is the greatest anthology series of all time. It had great acting, writing, and the ability to discuss topical issues without feeling preachy. That's why so many people, myself included, love to binge watch it every New Year. Everyone knows the classic episodes like To Serve Man and Time Enough at Last. But there are a lot of good episodes that don't get talked about as much. If you haven't seen these episodes, don't worry. This is a spoiler-free video. Here are 10 underrated episodes of The Twilight Zone. Let's begin. Number 10. The Chaser. Roger loves Leela, but Leela doesn't love Roger. As a matter of fact, she can't stand the guy. To gain her love, Roger buys a love potion from a professor. He slips it in her drink, causing Leela to fall madly in love with him. Boy, that's pretty disturbing. The best thing about the Chaser is the professor. He acts like a cranky old man. Yet, at the same time, he tries to give Roger some words of wisdom. He knows giving Leela the love potion isn't going to turn out well, and he does everything he can to discourage Roger from buying it. But Roger doesn't listen, not that the professor is surprised. He obviously encountered so many guys like him before. The Chaser is a good be careful what you wish for story, as well as a reminder that if the girl you love don't love you, it's best to move on. Number 9. Printer's Devil. Starring Burgess Meredith in his only Twilight Zone appearance as a villain, Printer's Devil revolves around a mysterious man named Mr. Smith, who helps a failing paper called the Courier succeed. Mr. Smith has an uncanny ability to report the news just before it happens, almost as if he is causing them to happen. The best part is where Mr. Smith tries to get Douglas Winter, owner of the Courier, to sign a contract promising his soul, suggesting that Mr. Smith is in fact the devil. Mr. Smith plays this up as a joke. The devil doesn't exist, right? The hour-long episodes get a bad rap, with good reason. Most of them feel like they would have worked better in the half-hour format. Printer's Devil is one of the few that works as an hour-long episode. Number 8. The Invaders. The plot of this episode is simple. A woman who lives alone on the farm gets visited by tiny aliens. The aliens then proceed to terrorize her. It doesn't sound like much, but The Invaders does a great job at delivering its story. Much of it is due to the fact that this episode has almost no dialogue. Agnes Moorehead, who's best known as Endora from Bewitched, does a fantastic job of showing the woman's fear through body language and facial expressions. Another thing that makes The Invaders a great episode is where the aliens are from. All I'll say is, you should see it for yourself. Number 7. Long Distance Call. A little boy named Billy gets a toy telephone for his birthday from his grandma. Billy is very close to Grandma. Maybe too close. For when Grandma was dying, she referred to Billy as her son. Her real son is Billy's dad, who Grandma says was taken away from her by a woman. He got married and moved away. There's nothing wrong with that. Billy's mom is disturbed by Grandma's attitude, but her husband writes it off as her illness getting to her. After Grandma's death, Billy starts to talk to her on his toy phone. At first, his parents think he's just pretending, until he tries to kill himself because Grandma told him to. Boy, this episode is disturbing. Grandma has to be one of the most evil characters to be featured on the Twilight Zone. She seems harmless at first, until she starts to talk about death on her grandson's birthday. Then as she lies dying, she basically dismissed her own son. What kind of mother does that? Then she tries to get Billy to kill himself, just so he can be with her. You can't get any more evil than that. The best parts are how Billy's parents react to the situation. The father doesn't want to believe his own mother would do something so horrible, while the mother recognizes how messed up Grandma is. If you love a disturbing story, Long Distance Call is for you. Number 6. A Nice Place to Visit. This one is a little hard to talk about without giving too much away, so I'll be brief as possible. Rocky Valentine wakes up after being gunned down by the police. He meets an angel named Pip, who takes him to a fancy house. What did Rocky do to deserve this? All I can say is, see it for yourself. Number 5. The Fugitive. Charles Beaumont wrote some of the scariest episodes of The Twilight Zone, the best examples being The Howling Man and The Living Doll. Yet, he also wrote this episode, The Fugitive, which is the most light-hearted episode of the series, showing what a great writer Charles Beaumont was. The episode is about Jenny, an orphan girl with a bad leg, and her friend Ben, an alien who has special powers. One day, 2 men come to visit Jenny's bad-tempered aunt to find out about Ben. They traveled a long way to capture him. Jenny and Ben's relationship is what makes this episode work. Unlike Billy and his grandma from Long Distance Call, Jenny and Ben have a cute relationship. Seeing how nasty Jenny's aunt is towards her, it's nice to know that she has such a good friend to turn to. My favorite part was when Jenny was asking Ben why the men were chasing him. After telling her he's not a robber or a murderer, Jenny said, "Then you must be a communist." I don't know why, but I always laugh when she says that. The Fugitive is a great episode to watch if you are in the mood for something lighthearted. Number 4. The Last Night of a Jockey. Like The Invaders, The Last Night of a Jockey features only one actor. In this case, Mickey Rooney, who plays a disgraced jockey named Grady. Grady has been given a lifetime ban from horse racing after being caught horse doping. The entire episode takes place in Grady's apartment, where he has an internal monologue. His internal voice reminds him of all the bad things he did in his life, while Grady tries to justify his actions. This could have come off as silly, but Mickey Rooney does a fantastic job at pulling it off. Somehow, Grady's inner voice is able to grant him any wish he has. What does he wish for? All I can say is that The Last Night of a Jockey is a great be careful what you wish for story. Number 3. Still Valley. Confederate soldier Sergeant Paradine goes into town to survey the number of soldiers nearby. To his surprise, all of them are standing still. How could this be? Paradine meets an old man named Teague, who claims to have cast a spell on the soldiers. Naturally, Paradine doesn't believe him, until Teague does the same thing to him. Teague explains to Paradine that he's come from a long line of witches. If he wanted to, he could use his powers to defeat the Union Army. The only reason why he doesn't do it is because he's going to die soon. So he gives his book of witchcraft to Paradine. We all have causes we believe in. Still Valley asks the question, how far are you willing to go for your cause? Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Or are there certain lines you shouldn't cross? Hopefully, you'll never have to answer those questions. Number 2. One for the Angels. Lou Bookman is a sidewalk pitchman. He is a kind man who is loved by the children of the neighborhood. Lou is played by Ed Wynn, who many of you may know as the voice of the Mad Hatter in Disney's Alice in Wonderland, and as Uncle Albert in Mary Poppins. Wynn is just so lovable as Lou Bookman. Wouldn't you hate to see something bad happen to a guy like that? Seeing that this is the Twilight Zone, something bad happens to him. One day, as he is entering his apartment, Lou is visited by Mr. Death. Mr. Death informs him that he is to die at midnight. Not wanting to die, Lou gets Mr. Death to agree to give him an extension, on the condition that Lou has to make a big pitch that, in Lou's words, is one for the angels. Lou doesn't even try to hide the fact he has taken advantage of Mr. Death. He even bluntly says that in one of the funniest scenes of the entire series. Lou's actions do have consequences. For Mr. Death is forced to take a little girl who happens to be one of Lou's friends. One for the Angels explores two important themes: the inevitability of death and how our actions can hurt the people we care about. Lou takes advantage of Mr. Death for his own self-interest. It's pretty funny that Lou doesn't even care if Mr. Death knows this. Once he finds out someone he cares about is going to take his place, Lou is willing to go with Death without making the big pitch, showing us what a kind man he is. Would you be that willing to sacrifice yourself for someone you care about? Number 1. Person or persons unknown. This is the first episode of The Twilight Zone I've ever seen, and it's my personal favorite. Why? Because it deals with something that could actually happen, though admittedly not in the same way. Losing your identity. David Gurney wakes up after a big party to find that nobody knows who he is. Not his wife, his co-workers, his bartender, or even his own mother. It's like David Gurney never existed. No matter what he does, he just can't prove who he is. Person or persons unknown makes you think about your identity. Much of it is tied to important documents like our social security card, ID or driver's license, and birth certificate. It's also tied to the people we know in photos. Once all that is taken away, it's like we no longer exist. Person or persons unknown explores this problem in a fantastic way, but it's still something that could happen, which is a scary thought. Some people think the ending is a cop-out, but I don't. I won't say what happens, but it makes you wonder, what is happening to David Gurney? Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comment section some underrated episodes you guys like that didn't make the list. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later.